All right. Renita writes, how do you stop the state from recreating itself in an ANCAP society?
Ooh, I like it. I like that question.
Yeah.
Power vacuum.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's right. So I guess this is a question that isn't given a ton of attention by most anarcho-capitalists because, I mean, even though we like debating really theoretical subjects, this one seems like the last one we need to worry about. It's like, all right, we've defeated the state. Now, it seems like let's figure out how to do that first. But it is an important question. So I think it's like, I guess the most important question is how do you achieve a stateless society? But after that, it's a pretty important question to say, how do you stop the state from coming back? I guess I would say, I mean, this is just an obvious given at the beginning. I'm not answering your question. I'm just stating this. But this is not, when people talk about a vacuum, the argument, this is not, many times it's used as an argument for a state, which is not, to me, a legitimate argument. I mean, if your biggest concern is a state coming back, you don't want to have a state because then you've already lost the game. But if you're saying we achieve an anarcho-capitalist society, well, what is that going to look like in real human terms? I mean, the only way that's ever going to happen is either, I would say one of two things. Maybe there's something I just can't foresee. But either, number one, enough people are convinced that free markets, individual liberty is the way to go. Or, and perhaps more likely, technology renders the state completely useless. Now, in either one of those scenarios, I think, number one, you'd say, whatever you do, whatever you did to achieve it, you have to keep in place, right? So in this scenario, we've already achieved an anarcho-capitalist society, so you need to keep that in place. It's really important that you continue to, educate people or continue to have people believe in this. Or it's very important that you continue to have a culture that supports freedom in order for freedom to maintain. I don't really buy into the vacuum argument on itself. Okay. So the problem is that, to me, I look at it like the state is a cancer. And this is why, when I say at the beginning of the show that we started as the smallest government ever and have become the biggest government ever, which is, I think, just a fact. I don't think there's an opinion to that. Like, if you look at the government that was created in the United States of America under the Articles of Confederation, try to find throughout history a more restrained government than that, where it was like everything, it was written by these brilliant men who knew all about the dangers of tyranny, who had just overthrown a tyrannical king, who were like, we're going to have all of these checks and balances, and everything's kind of thrown off, and and then even with the Bill of Rights to the Constitution, just all these lists of things that Congress can't do, and all these shackles placed on government.
To me, part of what you're saying is, hey, listen, if there's any government, the nature of government is to grow.
Yeah. Well, what's stopping it from growing?
Right. But then I think the question, which is somewhat valid to me, goes, hey, there seems to be a natural inclination of people to kind of either take power or to want government.
Right.
So if there's zero, how do you prevent something from coming up?
Okay. So, but this is what I'm getting, and I'm trying to get to that in my typical long-formed way. But I'm just saying, so it's the nature of government to grow, and not just to grow, but I think, and this is why I'm an anarcho-capitalist and not a minarchist, is because in the best case scenario that we've seen yet in America, it's not just that it grew, but it grew to be the most powerful government ever. And there's no denying that. I mean, there's no denying that there's ever been a government that's more powerful than the United States government is today. We can literally destroy the world many times over. We spend more money than any government. We have better better weapons of war. We spy on more people. We control. I mean, we can snap our fingers and make entire nations disappear. It's power unlike Genghis Khan ever could have dreamed of in his wildest, fantasy. Now, why is that? So I'm just trying to break that. Why is it that it grew so much? Well, you have this restrained government. You have a large free market. This produces more wealth than any country has ever produced before. This government, of course, its tendency is to grow and grow and grow. And seeing as how government is a parasite, like literally is a parasite on the economy, like they tax the taxpayers, they've now got a larger tax base than ever. And they've got people who can afford to be robbed more and more. I mean, if you're very, very wealthy, relatively to human history, they can take more and more of your shit. And so it grows and grows and becomes the most powerful government ever. And you see in governments like, say, North Korea, which exercises a lot of power over its own people, but really in the global scheme has nothing compared to what America has. They're almost like a parasite that's gotten out of control that's crushing the host. And so the people are just poor. And anyway, it's even like in typical parasitical relationships, it's actually better for the parasite if the host is somewhat healthy, so they have a healthy host to eat off of. So it's this cancer that grows and grows and grows and grows. So just like in medical terms, what you'd want to do is remove all of the fucking cancer. And I think that in an anarcho-capitalist society, I'm not saying it's impossible for a state to rise back up, but there's two things, right? Okay, so number one is the idea that if you have something accepted as a moral evil, it usually isn't going to come back very easily. So you don't see a slave trade reappearing in America today. It's not like, oh, there's a slavery vacuum, so now slavery is going to rush back in. It's like, well, it was kind of accepted as evil. We've won that battle ideologically, and now we have to move on to other things. Although, look, you could argue the war on drugs is a form of slavery, right? Like you're enslaving people for, simply moving a plant around. Like that's okay. But at least in the same sense that we had it in before, you don't see it reemerging. Now, to me, take me through it's not a guarantee that a state can arise in a stateless society, but take me through how this is gonna happen. Like, take me through. One of the things people ask a lot of times is, what if corporations basically become a state in a stateless society? Well, I mean, who's gonna do this? Who's gonna get together and start? I mean, how do you do this? You start. What is the state other than a group of people extorting others? So, okay, maybe a group of people gets together and extorts others. Well, what you have to do is fight back at that point. You have to defend yourself. The whole point of a state is that they're big enough that they've got the area on lock. Now, if some big corporation, which is probably, more likely than others, they have power in a market, right? Some big firm, some big company, whatever you would call it in a free market. So let's just say like Walmart decides that they want to start building an army. Okay? Well, here's the thing about armies. They're very expensive. I mean, we have the best ever, but it costs us almost $1 trillion a year to maintain. Okay? Right away. Also, by the way, there's never been one built in secret. People are aware of it. Armies are too big to just build in secret. You can't build them under a tent. Like, people are going to know that this is happening. So all of Walmart's customers, all of their shareholders are going to slowly start noticing that they're building up this army. Now, how is Walmart in business? What keeps them in business? It's because their prices are lower than everybody else's. So what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to raise their prices in order to build this up. My point is just that all of the incentives are against wasting money the way the government does, unless you have a tax base of other people's money that you can just endlessly spend. So, will there be crime? Because really, from the libertarian point of view, all the government is a criminal organization. So will there be crime? Probably. But when it's non-state crime, you have the benefit of being able to defend yourself. To me, there's two major things, right? So if you have, let's say there's a store and they're being robbed regularly. Well, first of all, they're not usually robbed regularly, right? Usually someone comes in, robs a store, they fucking move out because they don't want to be caught. Also, if they are robbed on any regular basis, the store can defend itself. It's like, okay, we get more security. Okay, we put cameras in. Okay, we do this. They take all these steps to try to not get robbed as much, to try to combat it. And then that store is also getting taxed by the government. Well, what do? Nothing. They just fucking take it. And they give the government their money. And it's for two main reasons. Number one, because the government's bigger, more powerful, and stronger than the fucking robbers are. And they know that they can't possibly defend themselves from that. But more importantly, I think, it's that there is an illusion that they're not bad. When it's not the state, everybody in the group tends to be like, yeah, those robbers are fucked up people who are basically corrupting our society. When it's the state, people are like, oh no, that's us or whatever. So I don't know a foolproof way. How do you deal with aggression? You have to defend yourself. But if it's not a state, if you achieve a stateless society, I think there's a much higher likelihood that people will see it as an evil and people will be able to defend themselves. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but I think that's like, to me, why a stateless society is the best bet. Because there's never going to be, and there never has been, a minarchist society, a minarchist state that remains a minarchist state. They will always grow more and more and more powerful. Because if you have the right to take people's money by force, why would you not just keep taking more of it? Why would you not keep extorting more wealth out of the system?
Well, do you have any examples of an anarcho state that remained an anarcho state?
I don't know that an anarcho-capitalist state has ever really been successful or has ever really been implemented in a true that we would be happy with it. But I think there's certainly examples of sectors, like you could look to areas in the economy that have been, you know what I mean, like more or less free market. But no, I'm not saying that is the final answer right there. The fact that it hasn't existed means it can't. I'm saying that not only has it not existed, but there's no way a minarchist state would stay a minarchist state. In fact, you'll probably be looking at a way bigger state than that. So really, to answer your question, but you can't, probably not.
Yeah, but you can't. You also just can't. You can't state as an absolute, and an anarcho state would remain anarcho.
No, I wasn't stating that. I think you have a better shot at it. I think you have a better shot at maintaining freedom. No, I said it's possible that that a state would try to arise. I mean, it's possible that the slave trade could be brought back. I can't state for an absolute that it wasn't. I think, though, it would take some type of crazy event to usher it back in.